What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Whiskey, Web, and Whatnot with myself, Robbie the Wagner, and my co-host, as always, Charles William Carpenter III. With our guest today, Matt Pocock. What's going on, Matt?
How you doing, guys?
Good.
Superb. Thank you for joining us from afar and making me do this for breakfast.
Yeah.
No worries. What time zone are you on right now, Charles?
It's Pacific, so I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. We don't do daylight savings, so I'm currently on Pacific time. It is 9:30 a.m. Drink or be gone. Beer is for breakfast, drink or be gone, except for having whiskey.
Sounds good.
For folks who may not have heard of you, Matt, can you give a quick intro into who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, my name's Matt. I am, I guess, now a full-time TypeScript educator. I have been for about a year or so. So I mostly work essentially on Twitter, posting stuff and building courses and educating people about TypeScript. I don't work for the TypeScript team or anything like that. I'm just flying solo, doing a ton of YouTube stuff and a ton of building out courses and learning materials. Before that, I worked at a company called Vercel. Might have heard of them, doing developer advocacy. And then before that, at a company called Stately, where I was working on a library called XState, which is all about state machines and state charts. And we ran into a lot of TypeScript issues there, which got me into TypeScript. And I started posting about the more weird, advanced, kind of magical, wizardy stuff to do with TypeScript. And it led me here, which is not where I was expecting it to go.
Life is an adventure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so we'll start you off right then. Let's talk about a little whiskey. I know you're a whiskey aficionado, as you were telling us before we started to record. Today having some of the Dalmore 12-year, called the Dalmore 12, so age 12 years makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
As with all single malts.
That would be weird.
Yeah, it'd be weird. The Dalmore 12, 13-year-old. Thanks, Robbie. 80 proof, so it's a milder one, and that might be a little more appealing to you. Let's see here. 100% malted barley, as all single malts are. This one's cool because it's aged in American white oak and Oloroso sherry casks. So it might have some sweetness to it or something.
Mm-hmm.
Without further ado, as they say in the UK.
That we all do. Yeah, that's how we say it.
Yep.
Yeah. It smells to me a lot like, I don't know if you've had that high chew candy. I think it's like some kind of Asian candy. And it's, I don't know, they have a bunch of fruit flavors, but it's like, it smells kind of tropically candy-like. It's very similar to those.
That's interesting because I am getting more of like a vanilla bean out of it. Little sugared little vanilla bean.
Did you read the back of the box?
I didn't.
Because it said something about vanilla bean.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just that good.
Yeah.
I'm so far out of my depth, it's kind of terrifying. I hate this stuff so much that I went round my friend Pete's house, who actually does like whiskey, and I got him to try the whiskey. And I said, what should I say? So I thought I would, come on with a bit of
I can't wait
stuff.
for this.
I knew, but I forgot. I actually
Oh.
forgot. I didn't write it down. He said it was nice. He really liked it. And it's, it's not particularly fiery or a bit of fire.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like, I did find myself, actually, as a non-whiskey drinker, one night just thinking, okay, I feel a bit tired. I feel a bit like, long day. I just want to sit down and I want to look out at the moon and I want to have a little drink of whiskey. And I did. And I enjoyed it.
Nice.
See, not all whiskey is bad, but there is plenty of bad out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And also, it was nice of your friend to offer you some tasting notes, but the reality is we're all kind of making this up as we go on. He picked some random Asian candy and I picked vanilla beans. They're probably in no way related. And nobody's wrong. That's kind of the nice aspect of it, though. Yeah, I get a little, chocolate in the finish, I think, for me. Like a light chocolate, I'm little
watching
floral.
you read the box.
I'm looking at this thing, but the box is in the trash back there. You be quiet.
Yeah, roasted coffee and dark chocolate is the finishing notes.
I work for the Dalmore. Yeah, so Matt, I'm not sure if you're familiar or not, but we do the tentacle scale also. So 1 to 8 tentacles, because octopus has 8 tentacles. We're so clever. 1 being never want this again. 8 being this is amazing, your favorite whiskey of all the ones you hate. And obviously 4's in the middle. We we separate them a little bit by, scotches, bourbon, whatever else, but we have a drinking problem and have tasted a lot. So you certainly can put that up against whatever you want. It's all pretty random anyway. But I am going to say for a scotch, I'm not a big scotch drinker. I tend to find them overwhelming with like either smoke or peat or something else. I'm not detecting really maybe a slight smokiness in this, but like not much of either of those. The sweetness gives it some roundness for me. And I usually find them too mild at this low of a proof, but I actually think this has a lot of flavor at 80 proof. For a breakfast whiskey, I'm going to give this like a 6.
Yeah, I think I agree. There are a lot of good flavors in here. I think the only downside is we're used to a little more proof in ours usually, so it's a little watery to me, but I think all the flavors I'm tasting are very good. I guess that's the sherry casks maybe giving it some good flavor. So yeah, I would say, I'm trying to think. I'll just say 6.2. You've persuaded me.
It was tough twisting your arm from afar, but
yeah.
All right, Matt, what do you think?
I think for myself, I would give it, let's say a 4, which is if I were to drink a whiskey again, if I ever feel the call of the moonlight and I fancy another little sip, then I would probably reach for this bottle again. I think though Pete would give it a 7. So I'm going to go with Pete's recommendation because he said this was possibly one of the best whiskeys he's tasted.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. So we're saying next time we should invite Pete on, is what you're saying.
Yes, essentially.
Yeah. How is he at TypeScript?
He's very good at TypeScript, actually.
Oh, okay.
Oh, excellent. Win-win. All right. Well, you send him our way.
And he said he's here today. Yeah,
and here comes Pete to take over the interview. Perfect. Sorry, Matt.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, boy. We should talk tech things, I suppose, at this point then.
Yeah. So we usually start with some hot takes, which we'll just go through real quick here. So we usually ask if people use TypeScript at all, but obviously you do. So in TypeScript, do you like to use inferred types or explicit types?
Yeah, this is the big mama of debates, or at least it was a couple of months ago when it exploded all over Twitter. Explicit types versus return types or inferred types. For me, inferred types make most sense because they're most likely to be correct, especially when we were working on XState, where you had all these types to do with state machines and very complex types being threaded through. To actually, let's say you created a machine and then you pulled it down through a bunch of functions, to actually annotate those types yourself is way more trouble than it's worth because you're just overriding what the system already knows about your stuff. The only way return types really make sense is if you want to make sure that the function you're creating is secure and like used in a bunch of different places, but to be honest, TypeScript is clever enough that it will figure out the correct type based on all of your if statements and switches and all that sort of stuff. So for me, inferred types are the best, but return types do sometimes have some use cases.
Follow-up question. I don't know if this is getting too into the weeds here, but so I had an inferred type earlier today, actually, that was like 3 different types of objects that it could be, or null or undefined. And I wanted like the second one. Like, how do you, is there a way to grab that? Like, I don't know.
So you're talking about like you got 3 different shapes coming in, like I don't know, triangle, circle, or square or something. Yeah. And you want to grab square, let's say, out of those. Or you've got null or undefined. So yeah, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. Like you could use like a custom type predicate if you want to, like build your own type guard, like is square or something. Or you can just say corners in like object or whatever and make sure those are 4. And then you come back to your, you just narrow it down through that. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. I mean, the first one I'm thinking about is even just a discriminated union where you just have type square, type circle, type triangle or whatever on each of those members. And then you can just go if object.type equals square, then you've got your square and you can access all the other properties. So there's several different ways to do it.
Okay, that's fair. I'll let you do the next one, Chuck, unless you had a follow-up to that.
No. I just love how there's never one for sure answer. It's what I love about programming in general. It's never like this, I'm right. That's the thing about the Twitter arguments. Everybody thinks they're right. Yeah, so speaking of Tailwind or vanilla CSS, and I looked at your website code, so I know what your answer is, but go ahead.
Tailwind, absolutely Tailwind, yeah.
Which is the right answer.
Because, I'm just terrified of the cascade, essentially. I know that people say trust the cascade, use the cascade, but I'm scared that the cascade is going to tsunami all over me and terrify me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the funny thing. The last thing you tell it is always right.
And it's just got so good, like, in terms of the developer experience of it. Like, I was using it even before, like, they had the VS Code extension, and the VS Code extension now gives you autocomplete, smart autocomplete, and, like, Tailwind merge or whatever, so you can smartly combine different variants and things. It's just amazing. And CSS, I've always had, issues with CSS. As long as I've been a developer, there's always been bugs caused by strange CSS, and since I adopted Tailwind, or since I started using Tailwind 3-4 years ago, it's just like they've gone away. I don't have to be terrified, and it just fits the component level paradigm a lot better than CSS, I think. CSS works really well with HTML and the sense of documents, and that you're editing one thing and you go and then edit your CSS. But with components, you just really want your stuff scoped to that component, and Tailwind is great for that.
Yeah, it really gets rid of that problem where you have like a megabyte of CSS and everyone's afraid to delete it. Because you can just, I'm not using this HTML, so by default, I'm not using these classes. So, like, yeah.
Exactly.
So, git rebase or git merge?
Git merge. I don't think I've ever git rebased, which is terrifying, even in itself. I've always been a merge boy. Unless it's been like an automated thing on a GitHub repo or something where I've just pressed the green button and done it, I don't feel like I've ever rebased, which is sort of a terrifying thing to admit. But yeah, I've just always been a merge.
Here's a follow-up question. Are you a senior engineer if you've never get rebased?
Great question. I guess not, man. I guess not.
Subjectivity all over the place.
I wonder if Pete has git rebased. I bet he has.
I just want to talk more about Pete now.
Has.
What is Pete's favorite football club?
I think Pete hates football.
Oh,
I love football, by the way.
I've got
three teams that I follow, so
we're gonna put a pin in that because I also love football. Proper football, not that egg ball game shit.
Fabulous.
What do you think about signals?
I haven't really experimented with them. I saw Ryan Caniato's talk at a conference called Modern Frontends, which was like a complete crapshoot, but his talk was incredible. Basically talking about how signals are effects. You know, if we think of React, like I'm a React boy, I've used React for yonks. And if you think about React's use effect, and you take that use effect and you use it to update the DOM, essentially, and create bindings, then that's where signals live. I really, really like the idea. I've just never found a reason to play with them beyond, because especially I was focused on XState and focused on XState's implementation with React. So XState is a state manager in itself, and it uses kind of the traditional Redux model of you have some state somewhere, and then you subscribe to that state and you select on it, essentially. And what's cool about that with state machines is you get to say, okay, if state dot matches this, then you can show a certain UI. So I would love to see that combined with signals as well, because it's kind of the same stuff as just a different way of doing bindings. But I'm into them. I've just never gotten around to using them yet.
Yeah, and maybe in a roundabout way you have in the same ideology, like said, okay, yeah, because I like the basic thought around like a Redux immutable state machine and subscribing to that and all that kind of thing, because I think hooks are kind of weird and wild. So my follow-up would be this then. You've been in the React ecosystem for quite some time. So class components or functional components, I mean, are you happier now or were you happier then?
I am so much happier now. It's unreal. I put hooks into production, I think, like the day they came out, actually. So
with no documentation.
No documentation, no nothing. I saw the talk. I was like, React Finland or wherever it was. I was immediately hooked. React Iceland, I think. And I just
pun intended.
Loved it. Oh no, I'm not getting the pun.
You said I was immediately hooked.
Oh damn it! Yeah, that was so instinctive that it just came out. I immediately fell in love because I was looking at my job at trying to. We had a bunch of different like duplicated code, and I felt that hooks just solved a ton of our problems immediately. And I put them in production like immediately, and they worked so well. And to be honest, I've never looked back. I've never really understood the criticisms of hooks. Like hooks, you can think of them as kind of like a DSL, like a domain-specific language. They're just supposed to work in the React environment, and they don't really work if you take them out of the React environment. But they just fit so nicely with the problems that I was trying to solve at the time. So I've always loved them for doing that, and they've bought a big dividend of love from me.
I think most people are happier with functional components. And I think for me, though, it's just like the problem with hooks is they just, and maybe it's because I haven't used them much, is just that they like are harder to understand for me. The mental model feels a little backwards, but I mean, I know they give you a lot more power is like the big use case, but
Yeah. Like, it's great when you don't have to pass down props for levels and things like that. Like, there's a lot of cleanup in that range of things. All of a sudden, we stopped caring about re-renders. That was interesting. Like, it used to be like, don't re-render, and that was like the big performance thing. I feel like hooks do cause a lot of re-renders, but there's a lower performance hit because of that. So that's kind of fine. Like, it's nice not having to think about that. The other thing that I thought was weird about them, though, is that within your lifecycle functions of a class component, like, those made sense to me because you read them and they did what they were called, right? And then you had this whole like mental jump, though, of where in the life cycle of this component do I use what hook and how do I kind of make it mimic the other thing. If I had come into it clean with functional components, obviously it would have been like straightforward, but I had to like adjust my mental model from like, oh, this is how I used to do it. Now I got to do it that way to make it that old thing, but then maybe I shouldn't be designing it that way at all. And so it was like kind of a reboot there. So that was like one of my issues around that. But I can see where it certainly could solve some memory issues right up, where it did, not, that it could, but where it did actually.
For sure. Like, as a follow-up to that, like, I think the old re-rendering stuff like that we used to do in like should component update and things like that, it often led to more maintainability issues than it solved in terms of performance. I think actually what you gained in performance, you often lost in robustness in those models. I do agree that I think especially when we have these conversations, when we say, lifecycle methods are intuitive, use effect is unintuitive. That's the one we're kind of aiming at there. And use effect is really a totally different mental model. And I think that transition was managed in a way that I feel like could have been better. I felt like I got it out of the gate because I was having some issues with the lifecycle methods as they were. So I understood, oh yeah, I'm ready for this new mental model. I love it. Let's go for it. Let's like check everything every re-render. But actually, I often reached for X state in those situations instead of use effect because actually state charts, state managers is just so much easier to understand what's happening at every point in your life cycle if you've got it in a freaking PNG, like you actually understand the visual output of what your effects are doing and all of that orchestration. So I think what use effect did is it gave us an amazingly simple API that was an extremely sharp knife. You could cut yourself very easily on it, but it meant that you could make really nice abstractions. If you were good with that knife, then you were good with it. But I feel like should component update and the old lifecycle methods, they were sharp knives too. I don't know, maybe they were blunt knives. I don't know where that analogy falls down, but like they just led to code that sort of was harder to update, I think. Whereas a use effect, maybe they're both crap. I don't know, I'm talking myself into a corner there.
Yeah, you're like not sure, and you're like, I love this. Actually, they're all crap. I think the sharp knife where you need to kind of be chef trained and have good knife skills and practice to like really hone it and make it great. Like you've got a great robust tool, but the honing in. And then like conversely, the other ones were probably like a full set that you got at a wedding and they're okay. And you can do a lot with them and they're kind of straightforward. This knife for that, this knife for that. But then when you get in a pickle, you don't know what the hell to do and you got to create something else altogether. Therein started to become all these other state models, I think, is how do I handle this throughout my application and outside of the scope of just my component and stupid dumb components versus smart components and these container components and all these things that we started doing that just further convoluted things. I can see where like, okay, hooks are just going to make this a little more straightforward. So let's try that.
Yeah, so let's get to what we're actually here for. Not that not any of that was bad.
Dranks.
Yeah, so TypeScript is what you're known for. I'm curious, when did you first encounter TypeScript and did you immediately love it, or was it kind of a love-hate thing for a while?
Weirdly, the same job where I was first got into hooks was the same job that I first got into TypeScript. Like, this was a project that had a lot of things wrong with it. We were a small front-end team trying to keep up with a big back-end team, and we needed to increase our velocity a lot. The main thing that was happening was the back-end team would sort of change the API like tons and tons. And they would sometimes add little strange things into the API. So like things would be cased incorrectly, or things would be null where you didn't expect them to be. And they would change like the contracts every now and again. We had like a Google Doc where they would just paste in some, JSON, and that was our contract. And the front end that we were building was big, like it was a big, tasty front end with lots of data fetching, with running that data down into several layers, and it just felt like you were walking on ice the whole time. You would just find bugs all over the place. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to try to I was actually pushing for GraphQL at the time. GraphQL I thought would solve a lot of these issues because it meant that we would actually be able to have a proper contract. But because I couldn't get these guys to do GraphQL, instead we went for TypeScript. And I started by just describing the interfaces of the API in TypeScript and said, okay, these are the interfaces. Let's move away from Google Doc. Let's just make them in TypeScript. Let's just use these to describe this. And then I made a proof of concept of actually taking that and putting it in our application, and actually going, okay, when we fetch this data, this interface actually flows down. And the other guys on my team sort of hadn't been exposed to TypeScript so much. And when they found that, they were like, oh, I see, we're just never going to ship a bug again, right? Because all of our bugs at that point were coming from faulty API responses. So again, we got this dividend of happiness from TypeScript that sort of just kept rolling through the project. And it just meant our velocity was just so much higher than it was going to be before. And of course, we hit some strange errors and stuff, and we had to level up on that. And I was, kind of the TypeScript person, or became that way. Funnily enough, I got into the advanced stuff straight away because we had this kind of table components that we used in all sorts of places throughout the application for rendering all these different tables. I realized, okay, I could actually change the render row function in this table component based on the data that's passed in. This was the first component that I touched with TypeScript. So my first component I ever wrote was a generic component, one that actually changed its sort of type information based on the stuff that you passed in. And so again, that just meant, okay, we can actually drop a load of type annotations because we've got this generic component working. So that was how I first got into it. And then after my next job, I joined a company that I think it was a React Native app that was fully JS, and I converted it all over to TypeScript. And it just again gave me such a big boost and gave me such a huge amount of confidence. Then I went to Xstate and, as I said, got exposed to all this crazy advanced stuff there.
So then what would you say is the tipping point if you are on a not greenfield project? It's already in JavaScript. What do you think would be the components of the project that you'd advocate for changing to TypeScript or leaving it alone? Either or, you can kind of.
So you mean motivation, or you mean
maybe more say it's an open source project and has 3 maintainers and some contributors, a half dozen or so. Was that a good project to convert over? Or do you think it's more for complex applications, or for an instance like you described actually, where you have issues with the API contract, you don't have buy-in for contract testing? Because you would think an easy solution there, rather than switch your code base over, is to agree on something like Pact, where there's contract testing and nothing goes in that breaks the contract without agreeance and sign off, right? But you need buy-in from both sides. So yeah, I don't know if you're everything TypeScript all the time, just keep your guardrails up, or do you think there's a tipping point, I guess?
It's interesting because for me, I'm all TypeScript all the time, and I was long before I became a professional TypeScript educator, with skin in the game. I think it just gives you a different way of coding, and the different way is you feel like you can just get away with anything. That's how I feel. I feel like I can just sit at my IDE and just almost autocomplete all my way there. It felt like GitHub Copilot before Copilot. And not only do you get Copilot, but you also get the sense of security that what you're autocompleting to is legal and everything will work. Not only that, it sort of feels like when you can do well at TypeScript, you can be quite generous in that you can build these abstractions that other people get to use, and they get to consume essentially the nice abstractions that you've built. So, you create a generic group by function, and that group by function can then be used in all sorts of places in the code base, and people don't need to annotate it in order to get nice inference. It's a really hard question to answer, when should you translate your project into TypeScript? Actually, there's quite a lot of projects out there that have a core in TypeScript, a kind of like their utilities or their API methods or things like that, or the things that fetch the database. And then if you think of an application like a tree, you've got this stuff at the center of the tree, and then the leaves actually still in JavaScript, the components that consume that stuff. So you don't need to go all in on TypeScript in order to get the benefits of it. You don't even need to use TypeScript. You can use JSDoc or things like that. Just grab comments and all that sort of stuff, and you still get the autocomplete. For me, when I'm not using TypeScript, it feels like I'm coding in low power mode. I'm doing, semi-skimmed coding. Like it just doesn't make sense because using TypeScript means my IDE gets more powerful, and I just have so many more tools at my disposal. I guess I'm too far through the rabbit hole now to say I would happily do like a JavaScript project from scratch, because I think as soon as I got on a JavaScript project, I'd just be itching to make at least the core elements in TypeScript, so I got my tools back.
Yeah, and you feel like maybe you're able to catch potential issues real time rather than later on, and there's some edge cases here that weren't captured in testing or whatever else. If I had just been explicit through declared types or, just made it TypeScript so that it was smart enough through and it would tell me, oh, I've made a mistake here and my edge case is caught earlier real time.
For me, it's not even, it's not even about like robustness. For me, it's just a feeling like I just want to like be back with my friend,
Yeah.
And I think like this is why I think TypeScript is just so sticky, because when you go to TypeScript, people don't go off TypeScript. You know what I mean? If someone gets really into TypeScript, they just love it and they don't stop loving it. There's usually with a lot of tools like this, let's say someone gets really into testing, unit testing, like they might have a project where on that project, they, have a bit of extra time and they can invest in testing and they love it and they do TDD and all that sort of stuff. Then they go to the next project and maybe the constraints are different. Maybe, they're being pushed more. That doesn't happen with TypeScript. It's not like, oh God, I really need to ship this code. Let's just go back to JavaScript. Yeah. I don't see that happening a lot. People just use TypeScript now, and no matter what they're doing. And I think that's just because it gives you, when you're used to it, a really friendly, comfortable feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's good for the whole team, because if you have people that aren't that experienced, they get all that autocomplete, they get the guardrails that keep them from doing the wrong things. And like for people that are experienced, if they need to do something quick, come in and fix a thing, and they don't want to do all the types, like you can do 90% types. And I know it's a bad word, but you can throw an any in if you have to. At least you did a lot of good things first, right? Like,
right.
Absolutely. I think actually, that meme about the like the midwit thing, where it's like it's got the bell curve and it's got like the stupid guy on the left and like the angry guy in the middle, and then the the Zen guy on the right. Yeah. It's like on the beginner side, just use an any. Oh, you can't use any. How dare you possibly use any? And then on the right side, it's like just use an any. Like it's fine. Like you can actually, as long as, let's say you're inside a function, as long as the outside of your function is properly typed, it's kind of fine if you just use an any inside. It sort of doesn't matter too much, and especially if that function is tested anyway. So I think any gets a lot of terror attached to it, but it's just another tool, right? You can use it.
Right. Yeah. Sparingly used, okay. All over, maybe not as much.
Not so good. Yeah.
It depends on your intentions too, though. Like if you're going to come back to it and fix it, it's okay for now.
Yeah.
But like if you're never going to touch it again, then probably spend a little more time not making it any right now.
Right. So you don't have to come back, think about that investment. Yeah. Is it an early iteration, or are you deep in the project? Things like that.
Though a lot of open source libraries, they do actually have some as any's like stapled in there, like Zod and TRPC, React Query. A lot of these libraries, you'll find any's in the code base, and that's mostly because they're doing stuff where it's so complex that even TypeScript can't quite catch up to it. And so it's just sort of locking TypeScript in a cupboard for that line, Any can be a tool that you use along with other things to make your code more robust. Like a lot of people will feel like, oh, I can't get this function, I can't get this type magic to work if I use an any. I would just say just use an any, right? As long as you know that it's robust and it works, like just do it.
Well, I think this is a good time for this question then, which is, what is the biggest mistake people make with TypeScript?
Oh, God. I think the biggest one is getting scared of the errors and actually not reading the errors. I think the more you read the errors, the more you understand them, because the errors, they use this sort of strange language, which is they use an extremely precise language to describe everything. What that means is like, if you're not used to that language, then it can feel totally daunting and terrifying. Another thing is that they, like in a stack trace, let's say in a console error, you've got the most relevant piece of information at the top. Then the second most relevant piece of information, where this function was called, then the function that called that, the function that called that, function that called that, and then the environment it executed in. In a TypeScript error, it's in reverse. So you've actually got the least relevant information at the very top, and then the most relevant information right at the very bottom, which is the actual comparison that failed, let's say. And so a lot of people will just look at the first line and go, I have no concept of what that is, no idea what that's doing. That has no relevance to me. That's a type from a third-party library. Why is it saying that to me? But if you actually go all the way down and actually read it in reverse, that is, I think, like, that's going to just give you so much more context, because you understand, okay, that failed. Then you understand, okay, I understand where that type was at that time and like who the type was with and what was happening there. And it's like you're reading a legal case and you finally understand like what TypeScript is talking about. So I'd say that's the biggest mistake, is just misreading errors because you're not quite sure what TypeScript means.
Yeah, that's never happened to me. I don't know. Yeah.
That happens to me
No.
a ton.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
there's so much information before the thing you care about. It'll be like this huge like 46 property thing and this other 46 property thing and like 10 of those. And then it's like, actually, this is supposed to be a string, but this could be string or undefined. Oh, cool. Thank you. You could have just told me that like way a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is all about like knowing how to read it and knowing that it does like dig down like that. And it's not it's like the outermost thing that you have to drill into. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I totally agree with that. It's probably some of the things I've had the most trouble with is what's the issue? What's the issue? And then someone who knows better is like, well, it's telling you. Can you just, if you just scroll down,
have you read
it? There it is. Have you read it? Are you read? I am not
Exactly.
read. I am Chuck.
And it's another thing too is it uses this crazy precise language, and the language it uses is like, it's based on AST, abstract syntax tree of what's actually happening. And so it will use things like identifier or name, property, all this sort of stuff. And that's just not language that you will have come across if you've not looked at AST or not like looked at tons and tons of these errors. I do have a VS Code extension called TS Error Translator, which actually takes those errors and like translates them into proper English, which is very nice. It's on
that sounds
no,
great.
it's actually the Total TypeScript extension now, because I moved it into there. I've got another one as part of that too. It sort of like looks at complex syntax that you're looking at on screen and gives you like a little blue thing if you've not encountered it before. So if you see like a complex type or you see like a generic or things like this, then it will actually tell you what's going on there and link you to the relevant part of the documentation.
I will be installing that after this.
Same. Yeah.
That sounds
It's so
awesome.
So yeah, you've been posting a lot recently about some of the newer things coming out in TypeScript, like the using keyword and type argument placeholders, etc. You want to just go through a few of those and tell us about the new hotness coming out?
Sure. So TypeScript 5.2 is coming. I can't remember when the beta is going to be released, but they have a pretty scary cadence that they release this stuff. Like they just ship and ship and ship and ship. So I think it will be in the next 2-3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. We're recording on June 21st. It might even be out by the time this airs. So what has come out then in the beta is a new keyword that's coming to JavaScript called using. And this has reached stage 3 on TC39, which basically means that the committee that decides what JavaScript is going to be has decided, okay, we need to put this out into the world so we can get more feedback. It's like early stage ready, but it's good to go. So this using keyword, what it does is, let's say that you've got like a database call, then what you would usually do is like const db equals await get db. It goes and makes a connection or something. And then you use that. And then at the end of your function, you might do a try catch. Finally, the thing you definitely want to do is close that connection, right? You definitely don't want to leave that function without closing that connection. Well, it's very easy to forget to close it. And then suddenly you've just got hundreds of connections open and your database crashes or whatever. Well, using, what it does is you can say using database. And if that thing that getDatabase returns has a special symbol on it, which is a function called symbol.dispose, then when that variable leaves scope, it will automatically close that thing for you. It will call symbol.dispose or async dispose. And it means that you can just say using database, and that's it. And it will automatically close it when it feels it's time, essentially when the variable gets taken out of memory. It's super duper nice, and it means you can do things like WebSockets really easily. Just open a WebSocket just for a little call and then close it again. There's just tons and tons of applications like file reading or all that sort of thing. This is actually comes from C# or inspired by C#, at least the syntax is, and it's an extremely popular C# feature, which is pretty cool that it's coming here. I can't remember who actually proposed it, but it's come through JavaScript, and now TypeScript is okay, ready to go. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that makes a lot more sense. For some reason, I wasn't able to grok that from the tweet that I saw. I was like, okay, but I don't understand why this helps me more. Right there, automatic closing of connections that makes a lot of sense and seems really helpful because I'm forgetful. I'm getting older. I don't know if you're aware of that, but these bags under my eyes aren't just for sleepiness.
I definitely feel that. I don't like getting older. Although maybe I do. I sort of wanted to be older when I was a kid, but now I don't anymore.
I'm past that middle point where I would have been happy. Late 30s would have been fine for me. That was a great spot. Late 30s was good. Now, mid 40s.
Feeling the fingers of death on your shoulder.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, why does my back hurt all the time? And stuff like that. Everything pops when I get out of bed, Anyway. TypeScript. That's the thing we were talking about. Any advice for teams who are hesitant to try TypeScript or think it's too much overhead?
Again, I'm too far through the looking glass, right?
Right. But you've had to fight this. You've had to fight this battle before them. So early on, right?
Well, I guess yes, I have. And I guess my story from before is still applicable here, right? It's if you're having issues where you can't call that because it's undefined, or you can't access that because it's undefined, TypeScript is going to help you. If you don't run into those issues, or you run into them early enough that you can catch them, then your project may not be complex enough for TypeScript. Although I usually find that most projects become complex enough for TypeScript. Absolutely. It's funny because I have been having this conversation more recently with state machines and state charts. Should you adopt state charts? Should you use a state chart in your system? Well, if your system is at all complex or has the opportunity to be complex, then you definitely should. And I've never found a structure of handling JavaScript that's made any sense or made me feel comfortable as just having a TS file does. If you're thinking, should I do this? Then you should try it. You should try it with a toy project, because I think TypeScript really speaks for itself. I don't need to speak for it. I don't need to advocate for it. I don't really spend my time anymore just saying TypeScript is good, you should use it. I've never made a video like that. Really, I just say this is what's happening in TypeScript because you're probably already using it. I think we're just up to crazy amounts of adoption, and it feels like the entire industry is either choosing to use TypeScript or choosing not to use TypeScript. And that's a fine choice if you want to make it too. But TypeScript's always in the conversation, so you should know what it does and know how you feel when you use it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I imagine most people you encounter these days aren't saying, hey, help me convince my team. They're coming to you because they're ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they're ready to go.
Yeah, they've hit some stumbling blocks and they need some expertise to kind of increase momentum, right?
Absolutely. I think there is a story there about let's say you're converting a code base to TypeScript. Your entire team is not going to be equally on board. You're going to have people in there who are like, give me my JavaScript back. I just want my JavaScript. This is horrible. I do think you should probably install my VS Code extension first of all, because that's going to help you with the foreign TypeScript syntax or any of the scary stuff there. I'd also recommend just reading the TypeScript handbook cover to cover, because it's pretty good actually. It's lacking in some places, and there are some things that are not documented, but as a beginner experience, I actually think it's really good and well structured. Just try it, guys. Just try it, I don't know what more I can say.
Just try it, Robbie. Just kidding. He does it.
Yeah. I've been the advocate for TypeScript and on our team, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
You've been that guy. Mm-hmm. We're doing this. Actually, that is what Robbie is. He just shows up with some giant PR, and he's like, you don't want to waste my time, do you?
Yeah, no, I just come in and go, how can I change this? And no, but there's always, in an older code base, there's lots of tech debt, so there's always ways to improve. So TypeScript is one of those ways that you can also then feel comfortable like refactoring a huge component, because you're like, okay, I know if I totally break it, TypeScript will yell at me. So,
you know what? It was actually like the moment I fell in love, I was attracted to TypeScript straight away. But the moment I just fell for TypeScript was my first refactor. The first time that the data shape changed and I just had to change the interface, and it just, a 4-hour job turned into a 5-minute job because it just told me everywhere that needed to be updated. Oh, it was just, it just felt like cheating, you know? Like, it's just crazy when you can do that. And often, actually, that doesn't come up when you're just building something, because often you don't need to refactor that often, or the refactors that you need to do are just small. But as soon as a project hits a certain level of maturity, then you just, like, you just slow down, and those refactors can just tear your soul apart. Whereas if you're using TypeScript, it's just easy.
So speaking of Total TypeScript, oh, this is your question though, Robbie. I think
I figured you'd want to go into football. We're about at that time.
I'll get there. Yeah, I do. But we went to your site. There's some really cool illustrations on there. I really like the heading font face. It makes me think of like a kind of like sci-fi novels in the 80s or something. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's at all related or any kind of inspiration there. But then you have yeah or no?
Well, I'm a huge Magic the Gathering nerd. Like, and board game nerd, actually. Like, This is absolutely my bag. And so when I'm working with a team to do Total TypeScript, and like the illustrator said, you know, like I said I wanted to do something sort of wizardy, you know, because everyone called me like the TypeScript wizard or whatever. And I thought that would be good because like TypeScript can feel like magic, and you can feel like magic, you know, it just worked. And she said, you know, I'm really into Diablo too. Like that was my favorite game. And I was like, that was my favorite game as well. So we just had a mind meld and like just absolutely made this gorgeous, gorgeous thing. And like, I've never given her a single note. I think like everything she's produced is just incredible. And so that feeling of it, she just produced, you know, the illustration that's on like the top of totaltypescript.com. She produced that like without any notes or without any feedback. And I was like, bloody hell. I actually had a tear in my eye when I saw it. Like, incredible. And that just sort of inspired the rest of it and the rest of the illustration. So yeah, it's been amazing working with those guys.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a nice design for sure.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought. Is I was like, these illustrations are so good. I'm curious if they were made like for this, or if like TypeScript additions were added into it, you know? So that's what I was thinking, but it sounds like they're all custom. So they're very, very good. Very good.
All custom, all from scratch. Yeah. Michelle Hollick is absolute god.
Nice. Now, before we get to football, I do want to ask, have you played Diablo 4 then?
I have not played Diablo 4. No.
Okay.
Haven't been. I've got a Steam Deck, and I'm not sure whether it runs Diablo 4 or not. I mean, it probably does, but
I think it will.
I'm also just like, it probably will. I'm just extremely into Football Manager, and Football Manager is basically the only game I play these days. I'm still playing Football Manager 2018 because I've just like gone into my 40th season with Swindon Town Football Club. We've won, 13 Champions Leagues at this point.
Oh, wow.
And, raising up the next generation. I love that game so much.
That's nice.
Yeah, it eats up all my game playing time, unfortunately.
I pretty much just play FIFA, so I understand. Although that doesn't run on a Steam Deck, which is basically the only reason why I haven't bought a Steam Deck.
It does.
I thought you had to hack it or something. It does?
Nope. Just runs.
Okay.
Well, you're going to buy one now. Yeah.
How can I make
it
that
runs
a business
really well,
expense?
actually.
Oh,
runs
nice.
really well.
All right, this is great. Yeah, because I used to play it on Switch, but it's garbage. It's the Legacy Edition compared to the PC edition, and I played for quite some time. Oh, what was it? Google like mobile streaming thing that they just shut down last year.
Oh yeah. I
did
can't
that?
remember what it's called either, but
yeah, I can't remember, but it was nice because you could do it through like a Chromecast on the TV and the iPad. So it was just like wherever I'm at, I can play. Love that. They killed my dreams. So, okay, good to know that my money is gone. This is great timing for that.
They're killing everything these days.
Seriously. Yeah, Google's just, I don't know what. They're really bad at business in spite of all the money they make, apparently. Okay, so is Swindon Town your team then?
Well, I've got 3 teams. Liverpool was always my team growing up. That's the team me and my dad supports, and absolutely love them. Oh dear, that's not a good face. That's not a good face, is it? So you're not an Everton fan, are you? A Man United fan?
Man United.
Oh, I forgot that.
Since the 90s, yeah.
If I were to guess what you're... since the 90s, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But other than that, my wife's family, my wife's granddad has supported Arsenal since 1944.
Wow.
In a year that apparently because the Highbury Stadium was being used for World War II stuff, they actually played at Tottenham's ground, or they did a ground share with Tottenham, which is kind of nuts. And so I've been really into Arsenal, actually, which is another Man United. Another very friendly pair of clubs. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, well, this past season, other than shit the bed at the end, they're a fun team to watch. I give them that. Arteta has exceeded expectations, I think, except for he's talking to PSG now, so that seems kind of dumb. I don't know. Yeah, he won't go. He won't go for the money.
Rumors. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, but that's a strange, eclectic mix of teams especially all kind of within the Premier League too. Like Liverpool and Arsenal. I mean, they're not direct rivals by any means, but yeah, everybody's Man United's rival, essentially. At least you didn't say
sit in a room with someone who's been supporting them since 1944, and I dare you to not fall in love with the club as well. Like it's pretty crazy, actually. It's nice to... They're my second team, absolutely. Liverpool's still my first team. But
I was lucky. I have a friend who's from Runcorn, and is a United fan, and his family were for all their lives, and they used to have season tickets in the family stands that they had, so it was all standing room. And so I've had that experience where the whole family has been a fan for years and years and years. So I don't know if it would have been the 40s or so, but it definitely was quite some time. So that gets you going. I got into it. It was a little before the U.S. World Cup in '94, and then like watching Eric Cantona, it was just like, this is amazing and beautiful, and just I couldn't take my eyes away. So
an extraordinary player.
Yeah,
I remember it was, I think, World Cup '98 was the one that I really got into it. Michael Owen and David Beckham and the Argentinian player kicking David Beckham in the back of the leg and all that stuff. Oh no, sorry. David Beckham kicking the other guy. Yeah, it was the other way around. Yeah,
yeah. Wasn't it the Atletico Madrid coach? What is his name?
Diego Simeone. Yes.
Yeah, Simeone. Yeah. That's what I thought. So
kicking our beautiful Beckham. Oh no, he kicked him. Oh god.
And got the red card and got his life threatened.
I'm just rewriting history here in favor of the English, which has never happened before.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, no, never.
God save the Queen. Oh wait.
Yeah.
I won't hold all of that against you. Yeah, it would be worse if it was City, I think. I really went through a lot of Chelsea hate for a while. But now, with Pulisic there and everything else, he tried to be like, I watched some.
He's not really there, though. He's only one of 44 players, I think they've got on their books.
Right, so. Exactly. So hopefully he goes some. I really want him to go to Inter. Italy is the rumor. Milan is talking about it, but I'm an Inter fan also. It was like the first European match I ever went to was at the San Siro, Inter versus Fiorentina, I think it was, in '09.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got some pedigree. I like this.
I've been there. I've been to Old Trafford twice, and I've been to Barcelona too. So
nice. Well, I've been to the county ground at Swindon Town many times, and you're very welcome there.
Sounds great. I mean, I would go to any live game in Europe just because the energy is amazing. So it just depends on where it's at and whether I would wear my jersey or not, or my kit, as they say.
Your kit, yeah.
Anyway,
good pronunciation too.
Yeah. So gaming, football. Robbie found some fun facts that used to be a voice coach.
I did. For 6 years, I was a voice and singing teacher. I did a master's in voice and singing, and so I taught accents, I taught public speaking, I taught Shakespeare, I taught musical theatre, and all sort of stuff. That was my job for 6 years when I lived for a bit in London, doing work at drama schools and seeing people at my house and that kind of thing. And it was cool, because it means that I can speak, which is not something that all devs can do. So it felt like when I came into dev, I was put in front of clients more. I was able to hold my own more and discuss technical stuff more. And it feels like that's why I'm doing the job that I'm doing now, because I've got this weird old career, which is still sort of coming out in me, which I think is so cool to have those two sides match up, because I became a dev and I thought, maybe I won't do any of that sort of performance stuff again. But now it feels like, we're doing YouTube and doing all of this core stuff as well. It feels like I get to scratch the teaching itch as well as scratch the dev itch, which is just a lot of scratching.
Sounds itchy. But I do find that when someone tells me something in a British accent, like, I believe them. I think they know what they're talking about. It sounds more serious. I actually have my Waze voice as a British woman, like, because I think she knows where she's going.
Yeah. I think as well, if you were able to transmit like bold man with glasses, like through that as well with British accent, it's a powerful cocktail. You know, I'm sure I could just tell you anything. You believe it. This doesn't work in the UK though, by the way, because I just sound posh in the UK. Like, you know, Americans just hear a posh British accent and they go, they must know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And a British person hears a posh British accent and they go, what a bastard. This is an awful human being.
They want to slag you off or something like that.
Slag me off, exactly. Yeah.
See, I know some of I lived in Leeds for like a month. And,
nice.
you know, what was cool about that? Like in London, international city, you walk around, you talk, like nobody looks at you twice. In Leeds, people would hear my accent and they would be like, it's amazing. Keep talking to me. Just say things. Like, I thought it was crazy, but obviously enjoyed it. Yeah. Has anyone ever told you look like the British Anthony Edwards?
I have no idea who Anthony Edwards is. Let me Google it quickly.
Yeah, do that. He was on ER. It's probably like a big thing. He was in Revenge of the Nerds. Those are the two big things I can think.
I'm seeing photos of him old.
Yeah, he's probably very old now.
Looking good. There's also an NBA player called Anthony Edwards.
Really?
Looks like he's more prominent, and I don't resemble him.
No. Okay.
Oh, okay. No, I've got it.
Now you're getting it. Okay, good.
Now I'm getting it.
I didn't want to completely
that.
insult you.
I was going to say, is this a compliment or an insult, Chuck?
I mean, it's what he looks like, and this was a famous actor. I mean, I don't think that's like, you know, I didn't say look like Sloth from the Goonies.
There's a chess player called Veselin Topalov, who people say I look like when I take my glasses off. Or I used to play chess, and so I used to go to I went to a club like for the first time, and they're like, "You look like Veselin Topalov," and I looked him up, and he's just relatively ugly, angular face.
Okay, and you're like,
really?
Oh, that's not nice. Yeah. See, I think my statement is more complimentary. I'm gonna say.
Thank you.
And he's a very likable character in all these things. So he's like never the bad guy, murderer, or something else. So.
Is he like a sex machine, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely. Sex machine. Yeah, he's like the bald George Clooney, you know, basically.
Cool.
Yeah, was also on
good.
ER. Yeah, I think he was, you know.
Yeah, I forget he was on ER.
It was such a weird turn for me because he was in all these like comedies and stuff for a while. Again, like my first memory would be around Revenge of the Nerds, and he was one of the main guys, and yada yada yada. And then all of a sudden, he's like serious doctor on ER.
Well, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Fun facts.
Yeah. All right, we're coming up on time here. Is there anything we missed or anything you want to plug before we end?
Buy my course, totaltypescript.com. Have a look at all the fun illustrations as well. That's kind of most of the reason for going there. I've also got just tons of like free stuff on there as well. So like there's a free beginners tutorial, free beginners with React tutorial too, which is kind of, we put the same production values in to that as the paid stuff. It's just shorter. So it's great if you're feeling like you want to pick up TypeScript, but you just don't know where to start. It's just me giving you little tasks to do, and then you do the tasks, and then I tell you how I would have done them. So it's extremely practical. And I really hate, like, you know, when you download a video course and it's like 40 hours of content, you know what I mean? It's like, there's no way I'm going to do that. There's no way I'm going to, like, there's just no way I'm going to ever spend the time doing that. So actually just giving you practical stuff after like a minute of video is my approach, and I think it works great, and it's free. So go and check it out.
Oh, definitely. And install that VS Code extension.
Oh, yeah. Total TypeScript.
Booyah.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you liked it, please subscribe, leave us some ratings and reviews. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.